2 weeks before my wedding, I received a family heirloom from my maternal grandma, Nona. It was a beautiful emerald necklace that had been passed down for generations. Nona explained that it had belonged to her grandmother and was now mine to cherish. It wasn't extravagant or overly expensive, but it held so much sentimental value that I couldn't have been more honored to receive it. Even though Nona mentioned it might not exactly match my wedding dress, I insisted that I would wear it proudly. What I didn't anticipate was how my sister Sienna would react to this gift. You see, Sienna had always been a bit spoiled and was used to being the center of attention. She had always felt like everything had to be hers, and she had a tendency to be possessive of our family's love and possessions. So when she found out that Nona had given me the necklace, she was visibly upset, though she tried to mask it with a smile. But it was clear from the tension in her face that something wasn't right. As my wedding day approached, I noticed Sienna becoming increasingly distant. We exchanged a few words here and there, but she never really spoke about the necklace or seemed to engage much in the wedding planning. That was until the day before the wedding when she pulled a stunt that I never saw coming. At the wedding rehearsal dinner, Sienna, in front of family and friends, decided to make a joke about my wedding gift. She tried to make everyone laugh by pointing out that as an adopted child, I probably shouldn't be getting such a family heirloom. She even went as far as to insinuate that the necklace wasn't really meant for me, mocking the idea that I would inherit something so sentimental despite not being born into the family. The room fell silent. I could see the shock on the faces of the guests, especially our parents, who looked horrified. I wasn't about to let her ruin my special day, so I stayed calm and composed. Little did she know, I had already anticipated something like this happening. I knew that Sienna's insecurities and jealousy would eventually surface, and I had prepared myself for it. Before she could continue, I calmly stood up and addressed the room. I told everyone that Sienna's comments were inappropriate and hurtful, but most importantly, that she had no right to speak about something she didn't understand. The heirloom necklace wasn't about who was biologically connected to the family. It was about love, tradition, and honoring the bonds we share as a family. I also gently reminded her that our family, including Nona, had embraced me as their own long before I ever married Lucas. At that point, the room was tense. Sienna was visibly embarrassed and tried to brush it off, but I could tell she was fuming. That's when our parents, who had been silent until now, stepped in. They couldn't stay quiet anymore. My dad looked Sienna in the eye and told her that she was being selfish and insensitive, and my mom echoed his sentiments. For the first time in a long time, they took a firm stand and expressed how disappointed they were in her actions. To my surprise, this public confrontation didn't just end there. Sienna, realizing that she had gone too far, tried to apologize, but it was too late. The damage had been done. She had tried to undermine my moment, my family's trust, and my relationship with them, and she couldn't take that back. In the days that followed, Sienna didn't show her face much. She became distant and refused to attend any family events, including the wedding. The guilt and shame were too much for her to bear, and she couldn't face the consequences of her actions. Our parents had made it clear that if she didn't stop acting like this, they wouldn't tolerate her behavior any longer. The wedding went on without further incident, and the necklace was proudly worn as part of my celebration. It was a beautiful, emotional moment for me, and I'm so grateful that I didn't let my sister's insecurities ruin what should have been the happiest day of my life. Now Sienna is too ashamed to face anyone, and our parents have disowned her in front of the entire family. I've always tried to be the bigger person, but this was a wake-up call. It wasn't just a necklace. It was a lesson about family, respect, and the importance of boundaries. And I'll be keeping those boundaries in place with Sienna from now on. As I walked down the aisle, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. Everything seemed perfect, until the music, which was supposed to play as I entered, suddenly stopped. Instead, a video began playing on the screen in front of all 150 of our guests. The sudden shift from the expected music to a video was jarring, and I was immediately thrown off balance. But when I looked at the screen and saw the footage, my stomach dropped. It was a video from my bachelorette party. I hadn't been prepared for this at all. The video, which I had thought was just a fun memory for my close friends and me, suddenly felt like an invasion of privacy. It was me and a few of my friends on a table wearing shorts and belting out Moana songs in the most ridiculous and carefree way, while we drank and made goofy faces. Sure, it was lighthearted and innocent, but it wasn't something I ever imagined being shown to our entire family and friends at my wedding. And in that moment, with everyone looking at me, I felt humiliated. My husband, Lucas, looked equally uncomfortable, and I could see the confusion and surprise on the faces of the guests. Some were laughing, others were whispering, and I couldn't escape the feeling of being exposed. This wasn't how I imagined my wedding to be. This was supposed to be a sacred, intimate moment. Instead, I was forced to relive a silly, personal, and quite frankly, embarrassing moment in front of everyone. As the video continued, I scanned the crowd and spotted my sister, Sienna, standing at the front with the biggest smile on her face. It was as if she was enjoying this, like it was all part of some sick joke. My mind was racing. Why would she do this? Why would she ruin such a special moment for me? I felt betrayed and humiliated, but at the same time, I couldn't even comprehend what was happening. How had she allowed this to go so far? After the video ended, there was an awkward silence, and the ceremony continued in a way that felt like an emotional blur. I don't even remember much after that. All I could think about was why Sienna would pull something like this. I had trusted her with such an important role. She was my maid of honor, my sister. I never thought she'd sabotage me, especially not on the biggest day of my life. Later that evening, after the ceremony was over and the guests had left, I confronted Sienna about what had happened. I asked her why she did it, why she would embarrass me like that in front of everyone. Her response was surprising. She said she thought it would be funny and a nice surprise, that she wanted to give me a memory to remember. But the look in her eyes told me that there was something deeper, something that had been festering beneath the surface. She couldn't take the fact that Nona had given me the necklace, that I was the one getting married first, and that I was the first to be pregnant in the family. Sienna's jealousy had gotten the best of her, and she had decided that this was the way to handle it. She tried to play it off like it was all in good fun, but the truth was there. It was a desperate, spiteful attempt to bring me down, to make me feel small. I was heartbroken. The fallout from the video didn't end there. Sienna tried to apologize, but I couldn't just let it go. I was hurt, and the damage had been done. I told her I couldn't forgive her for what she had done, not right away. It was too much, too cruel. Her actions had not only embarrassed me, but also made me question the true nature of our relationship. How could I trust someone who was so willing to publicly humiliate me just because she couldn't handle her own feelings of inadequacy? It took a few weeks for me to process everything. And with time, I realized that Sienna's behavior wasn't just about the necklace or the video. It was about her deep-rooted insecurities in the competition she felt with me. It wasn't healthy, and it wasn't something I was willing to tolerate anymore. My family and I, especially my parents, had always treated Sienna and me equally, but in that moment, I saw that I would have to distance myself from her until she could learn to respect me and our relationship as sisters. It wasn't an easy decision, but I realized that boundaries needed to be set. For my own well-being, for the sake of my marriage, and for the future of my child, I couldn't allow Sienna's jealousy and toxic behavior to continue to affect my life. I made it clear to my parents and other family members that I needed space from her. And while they respected that, I could tell that Sienna was deeply ashamed of her actions. In the end, the situation forced me to realize something important. I could never let anyone, not even family, ruin my happiness. My wedding day, despite the unexpected chaos, was still one of the most memorable days of my life. And I chose to focus on the love and joy that surrounded me, not the negativity. But I knew that for my own peace of mind, I couldn't allow Sienna to continue playing these manipulative games. It's been a few months since the incident, and though I've kept my distance from Sienna, I hope she eventually understands the consequences of her actions. For now, though, I'm just focusing on my own happiness, my growing family, and the love that I've found in my life with Lucas. When Sienna finally spoke, it wasn't an apology at all. In fact, it was a justification for her actions that made my blood run cold. She started off by saying she didn't think it was such a big deal and that I was overreacting. Her words, though, were the least of my concern. What really hit me was when she admitted that the video wasn't just some prank gone wrong, it was intentional. She had planned to make me look foolish in front of everyone. Her motive? Deep down, she admitted she was jealous. She had always felt overshadowed by me, and in her twisted way, she thought this would be her way of evening the score. The room fell silent as the weight of her words hit me. It wasn't about a light-hearted joke or a little harmless fun. Sienna had deliberately set out to humiliate me on the biggest day of my life. All that time, I had tried to justify her actions, telling myself she just had a bad sense of humor. But hearing her admit it, hearing her openly confess that she wanted to ruin my wedding day, was something I couldn't process. I looked at Lucas, who was now standing at my side, visibly enraged. I could see how much this hurt him too, because he had been so protective of me during the whole ordeal. He had made it clear how much he didn't want Sienna in our lives anymore, and now I understood why. He had seen something I hadn't, the ugliness behind her actions. Sienna went on, claiming that she had no idea why I was so upset, asking why I couldn't take a joke. She actually had the nerve to laugh, as if this were just another one of her childish antics. But this wasn't funny anymore. This was cruelty disguised as a joke, and what made it worse was that it came from my sister, someone I had trusted to stand by me. The betrayal I felt in that moment was indescribable. I told her in the most composed voice I could muster that I didn't need her in my life. I didn't want someone like her around, someone who had no respect for me, my marriage, or my family. She looked taken aback, as if she didn't understand why I was being so harsh, but I didn't care anymore. There was no more room for her toxic behavior in my life. I told my parents that I didn't want to hear her excuses or see her again. I was done. Sienna didn't argue further. She just sat there, looking defeated and embarrassed. Mom and Dad were silent for a long time, clearly torn by what they had just heard, but I could tell they knew I was right. They both apologized, but I wasn't interested in hearing it. They had allowed this to go on for far too long without addressing the deeper issues that led to this moment. That was the final straw for me. The following days were quiet, and while I initially felt guilty about cutting her off, I realized that my mental and emotional well-being came first. I didn't need toxic people in my life, especially on the heels of one of the happiest moments I'd ever had. Since then, I haven't spoken to Sienna. She hasn't tried to reach out, and honestly, I don't miss her. I've had a few difficult conversations with family members who support me, and they have all respected my decision. Some of them are upset by Sienna's actions, and I can tell they understand that this is about more than just one prank. It's about a pattern of behavior that I can no longer tolerate. In the end, I'm focusing on my new life with Lucas and our future together. I don't need to hold on to relationships that drain me. I've learned that it's okay to cut ties when people's actions show they don't deserve a place in your life. Sienna may be my sister, but right now she's someone who doesn't deserve a spot in my heart. Dad was absolutely livid, and in the end, it was him who managed to get Sienna to finally come clean about everything. She admitted that she hated that Nona had given me the family heirloom necklace and had always hoped it would go to her instead. It felt so strange to hear this, especially since we had shared jewelry so many times in the past. I tried to keep calm and told her that if she had an issue with me wearing it at the wedding, she could have told me beforehand, and I wouldn't have worn it. I thought she might want it for her own wedding one day, and I would have respected that. But no, that wasn't the issue for her. I was genuinely baffled by her sudden outburst. I reminded her that we've always shared jewelry in the family, so why was this one piece so different? Then I was even more stunned when I realized that everyone knew the necklace was meant to go either to the first daughter or the one who got married first. In this case, it was always me, as I was the first to marry, and that had been clearly communicated to both of us since childhood. So I didn't understand why it was suddenly an issue. It wasn't a secret, and yet she had been carrying this resentment without even talking to me about it. At that point, I confronted her, telling her if her behavior was truly meant to hurt me, then I couldn't be part of that anymore. I needed her to be honest with me. She stayed silent for a while, but then, with Mom nudging her along, she started crying. And then came the words that broke me. Sienna admitted that the necklace had always been intended for the firstborn daughter of the family, and she said that should have been her, not me. That was the moment I lost it. She then let out a torrent of anger, spewing words that made me feel like I was being cast out from the family. She said I wasn't even a real child of Mom and Dad's, yet I got all the love and attention as if I were the firstborn. The hurtful words hit me like a punch to the gut. It was as though she couldn't accept that I was truly part of the family, and she was angry that I was getting what she thought should have been hers. I reminded her that neither Mom nor Dad ever treated me as anything other than their daughter, And Nona had always treated me as part of the family too. I didn't deserve to be treated any differently just because I was adopted. That's when Sienna snapped. She started yelling that she didn't care how they had treated me. They should have treated me differently. It felt like she was attacking the very foundation of everything I had ever known about love and family. I couldn't take it anymore. I told her that if she truly felt I wasn't part of the family, then she had no right to be in my home. Lucas immediately stepped in and backed me up, telling her she had to leave. She did, but Mom went with her, crying and furious. I was devastated, but Dad stayed behind for a few moments. He gave me a hug and apologized for how everything had turned out. He told me he wished I had heard this from Sienna herself because he knew I would never believe the things she was thinking about me otherwise. He reassured me that no matter what, I would always be their daughter, and that meant the world to me in that moment. I was in shock after hearing from my grandfather, but at the same time, part of me wasn't surprised. Sienna had always been unpredictable when it came to emotions, and it seemed like her world had spiraled after everything that had happened. I couldn't imagine what could have led her to show up at Pop's place in the middle of the night with no explanation. I felt a pang of guilt for not being more understanding, but after everything she'd put me through, it was hard to feel anything other than confusion and hurt. I let Pops know that I hadn't spoken to Sienna in a month, and honestly, I didn't know if she was looking for help or just trying to find somewhere to go after the fallout with the family. He asked me if I wanted to talk to her, but I was hesitant. After everything she did, I wasn't sure if I was ready to face her. But Pops insisted that she seemed lost and broken, not the confident, defiant sister I had known before. That made me pause. Maybe she was seeking solace, maybe even an apology, but it felt like too little, too late. Still, Pop's words made me feel conflicted. Lucas and I had a long conversation about it. He could tell I was torn. He understood why I wanted to keep my distance, but he also knew how hard it had been for me to cut ties with Sienna. It wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. It was about the loss of a relationship I thought would always be there. He encouraged me to think about it carefully, but ultimately, he said it was up to me whether or not I wanted to open that door again. The next morning, I called Pops back. I asked him to give me a little more time to think about whether I was ready to talk to Sienna or not. I still wasn't sure if I could forgive her or even if I wanted to. What she had done had caused so much damage, not just to me, but to our whole family. I didn't know if we could go back to the way things were or if I even wanted to. I've been wrestling with this decision ever since. Part of me wants to hear her out, to understand why she did what she did and why she felt the way she did. But another part of me feels like there's no point in reopening the wound. I've spent so much time building my life with Lucas, my parents, and the people who care about me. I'm not sure if I'm ready to risk letting Sienna back in, especially after everything that's happened. This revelation from Pops hit me hard. I had no idea Sienna had gone back to Mason, and the fact that she kept it from us for so long was deeply upsetting. What was worse was the way Pops described how things had been escalating. Apparently, Mason had not changed. If anything, he had gotten worse. Sienna had been hiding the full extent of his behavior, and it sounded like the relationship had become even more toxic than before. Pops mentioned that she had started acting withdrawn and distant, and the stress from her ongoing involvement with Mason seemed to be weighing heavily on her. I felt a flood of emotions after hearing all this: anger, sadness, and even guilt. I couldn't understand why Sienna would willingly go back to someone like Mason after all we had tried to help her with. It was clear that this man was no good for her, and yet there she was, wrapped up in his web once again. Pops told me that she was on the brink of a mental breakdown, and he was scared for her. It made me realize just how much she had been struggling in silence, and how isolated she must have felt with no one to turn to. As much as I wanted to stay out of her mess, part of me couldn't help but feel a deep responsibility to help her, especially now that things were spiraling so far out of control. Despite everything that had happened, she was still my sister, and I couldn't just walk away. It hurt knowing that she had been silently battling with this for so long, thinking she couldn't share it with anyone. I couldn't ignore that my sister was in trouble, no matter how much she had hurt me. Pops had told me that Sienna was finally starting to realize that Mason wasn't who he had promised to be, and that he had only gotten worse, but it sounded like she was stuck, unable to break free from him. I knew I had to be careful in how I approached her, but I also knew that I couldn't just let her continue to spiral without offering her some kind of support. It wasn't about excusing her actions anymore. It was about being there for her when she truly needed it. I've been grappling with this decision for days now. I don't want to enable her behavior, but at the same time, I don't want her to feel abandoned. I can't deny that I'm hurt, but I also know that if I don't step in now, things could get much worse for her. So I've decided to reach out to Sienna and try to help her. This time, I will do it on my terms, offering support. Well, I'm bomb on yours for support, but also making it clear that the toxic relationship she has with Mason needs to end if she ever wants to find peace again. It's going to be hard, and I'm scared she won't listen, but I can't walk away without at least trying to help her rebuild her life. This entire situation has been weighing heavily on my mind, and I can't help but feel like I missed the signs. Sienna's been manipulated by Mason for so long, and I didn't realize the extent of it. Pop's description of everything that has happened in the past few years is just heartbreaking. I feel like I should have been more present in her life, especially when things started to get so bad. Mason's influence over Sienna is deeper than I ever imagined. It started with the small comments, and over time, he planted the seeds of doubt and resentment in her mind about all of us, particularly me. I remember when she used to be so independent, but now it seems like Mason has completely controlled her thoughts and feelings. He managed to convince her that no one loved her, that she was being overshadowed by me, and that our family only cared about me because Bon was the first to get married. That necklace, something that was supposed to be a beautiful and sentimental gift from Nona, was twisted into something toxic. Mason used it as proof that everyone favored me, fueling Sienna's insecurities even more. I can't believe it went this far. I remember how much Sienna used to trust me, how she used to turn to me with everything. Now she was isolated, listening to Mason's lies and falling deeper into this unhealthy relationship. It got to the point where she felt like she couldn't come to any of us for help. And then the prank at the wedding, that was the breaking point. I can't believe she thought it would be funny to embarrass me like that. But now I realize it was coming from a place of hurt and confusion, manipulated by Mason. It's devastating to hear that Mason has been physically abusive too. That really hit me hard. I can't believe Sienna has been living in fear like that. I don't know how I missed all the signs. Pop said that after the huge fight, Sienna came to him because she feared for her safety. It breaks my heart to know that she felt like she had nowhere else to turn. She trusted Mason, and he betrayed that trust in the worst way. I feel so guilty that we didn't notice how bad things were getting for her. It feels like we failed her, and now I'm asking myself what I could have done differently. I should have been there for her more, but what hurts the most is knowing that she's going through this alone, feeling like she couldn't ask for help from anyone. I want to believe that she would have turned to us if things were different, but Mason made sure she isolated herself from everyone who cared about her. Despite everything that's happened, Sienna is still my sister, and I can't just leave her to face this alone. I'm going to fly down to her and talk to her. I know I have to offer her my support, even though she's made mistakes. I'm not going to abandon her now. She needs to know that she's not alone, and that we're still here for her no matter what. This has been a wake-up call for me, and I can't sit idly by while she's in this situation. I can't undo the past, but I can make sure she knows she's loved and that there's a way out of this. Pops asked me not to tell Mom and Dad about the situation for now, and I'm honoring that request because at the end of the day, we need to respect Sienna's wishes. She has been through so much already, and I can't bear to think of her going through any more pain or disappointment. But I can't sit back either. I'm determined to make Mason answer for what he's done to my sister. He won't get away with this, and I'll make sure of it. Sienna is back at my place now. I filled Lucas in on everything, and while he's understandably upset with her, he's been incredibly supportive. He knows now isn't the time to bring up past grievances, and he's doing his best to help me be there for Sienna. It's heartbreaking to see Sienna like this. She's been crying and apologizing nonstop. She knows Mason manipulated her, but she also takes full responsibility for her actions. It's painful to watch her struggle, but I'm proud of her for taking ownership of the situation. I've encouraged her to get therapy, especially after reading through all the advice you all shared. What Pops described and what Sienna has told me about Mason align perfectly with what many of you pointed out: signs of narcissistic abuse. It's clear that she needs professional help to work through this and come out of this dark place. I just feel an overwhelming sadness for everything she's endured. Sienna isn't ready to tell mom and dad yet, and I'm respecting that. I don't want to push her into anything she's not ready for. But on the Mason front, we're making progress. We filed a police report, and since the house lease is in Sienna's name, we have evidence that Mason caused the damage, making him liable. The landlord has been a huge support throughout all of this, and he's suing Mason for property damage, which is a huge relief. Mason is facing 2 legal cases now, and he's been calling Sienna, begging her to reconsider. As much as I want her to block him, our lawyers have advised against it, saying anything he says could be used as evidence. So we're tolerating his calls for now, but we're determined to see him brought to justice for everything he's done. It's been a tough road, and I know there's a long legal battle ahead of us, but I'm ready to fight it all for Sienna. I'll be by her side through it all, and we'll get through this together. She deserves justice, and I won't stop until she has it. Sienna is still really struggling, and her self-esteem is at an all-time low. She's become a shadow of who she used to be, and it pains me to see her like this. I know the journey to healing is going to be long and hard, but she has to go through it, and I'm so grateful that she reached out to Pops. Without him, we would never have known what she was enduring. Since Mason came back into her life, he's been isolating her from everyone. She told me he would act out whenever she tried to see friends, and slowly they stopped reaching out to her. He also caused rifts in our family, all while doing nothing to contribute. He's been a leech, sitting around, claiming to look for work, but doing nothing while Sienna took on all the financial responsibility after he lost his job. I don't think he was fired. He probably quit so he could mooch off of her. I can't believe how naive Sienna was, but I know now isn't the time to make her feel worse. She's already been through so much, and the last thing she needs is for me to pile on. I just hope this whole situation wraps up soon, and we can begin healing as a family. This will be my last update. Sienna is now in therapy, and her therapist encouraged her to talk to mom and dad, so we did. It was incredibly tough. Mom and dad were heartbroken. I've never seen dad more furious, and if it were up to him, he'd handle Mason himself. The case is still ongoing, but it looks like we have a solid chance of winning. The landlord has been ruthless with Mason, and he has an aggressive lawyer, so Mason's chances of getting out of this are slim. The damages amount to tens of thousands of dollars, and with Mason having nothing, it's hard to see how he'll escape this. Sienna managed to get a restraining order against him. While I know that won't stop him entirely, at least it's a step in the right direction. Sienna is doing better, but I know she's not out of the woods yet, and it's going to take a long time for her to fully recover. Things are progressing, though, and I'm hopeful they'll continue to improve. She's also found a small apartment for herself and will be moving out by the end of the month. She'll still be in the same city, so I'll be making sure to see her often. The past few months have been chaotic, but now that things are settling, I hope I can finally start enjoying married life with Lucas.